Welcome back to the series where I fix my car. In this episode, we actually finish it and we get it out for a test drive. Now, I'm going to speed through all the extra repairs I had to do coming off of the last video, and that way we can just get to the test drive segment a bit quicker. So first of all, I had to do the CV axle. And to start, I needed to break loose the wheel hub nut, which was actually kind of easy once I got the correct amount of leverage. After that, I broke loose the ball joint pinch bolt and pushed the ball joint out with the pry bar. The reason I did this is so that I could get more movement in the wheel hub to push out the old shaft and to push in the new shaft. It's also what was recommended in the repair manual. Next, before I actually tried to take out the shaft, I needed to drain the gearbox oil. So I did that, and once I did that, then I got out the old shaft. Now, unfortunately I didn't record it, and for all future things that I didn't record, I'm just going to put up some text so that there's no footage, just so we can get this done a bit quicker. What I did do is record this video after, where I explain what I did to get the new shaft in. So I forgot to record putting in the new shaft, but you can see there it's new. The ABS ring's a bit different, so hopefully that doesn't cause any issues, but we can see it's in. And basically what I did was, we've got this bearing housing thing up here, so I just slid it through that. I put a bit of gear oil on this seal. This is still the old seal, but I put a bit of gear oil on it just to soften it up a little bit, make sure that we wouldn't tear it or anything if we accidentally hit it with the shaft, which I'm pretty sure I did a couple of times. But I also put gear oil, a decent amount of gear oil on the splines on that end, just all around. To make sure it was lubricated enough to just slide in with no problems. And similarly, well, I didn't put gear oil on this, I put grease on this. I put grease all the way around the bearing housing, so that it could just slide straight in and it wouldn't have any issues. And I also put grease on the splines on the hub end here, just CV grease, just CV grease, yeah. So that's really all I did. After that, I moved on to the steering rack boot. I started off by marking this line on the inner tie rod, which shows me where the jam nut lines up to, in order to try and preserve the wheel alignment as much as I could. Though to be clear, the car got realigned anyway, and I'd recommend that if you replace steering or suspension components, that you get it realigned. After that, I broke the jam nut loose, which took a lot more effort than I was expecting, and then I had to break loose the inner tie rod, which was a bit more difficult than I was expecting, but once I did, I got the tie rod end off, and I made sure to count how many rotations it made to get it off, and I also did the same thing with the jam nut. Then, once it was off, I took off the old destroyed boot. And yeah, it was really destroyed. Have a look at this. Then, in order to put on the new boot, since the inner tie rod is a bit of a different design to most cars, where it's sort of inverted, it's the female end rather than the male end that it is on a lot of cars, that meant that the new boot wouldn't fit over it, because its small end was much smaller in diameter than that inner tie rod was. There was a space right up to where the ball joint is in the tie rod for it to sit, but in order to get it there, I had to expand the boot by putting it in hot water for about 5 minutes. I also put plenty of silicone grease along the inner tie rod to make sure it would just slide right on, and eventually I managed to get it expanded enough to where I could get it over the inner tie rod and slid down to where it needed to be. Since I didn't have the special set of pliers to make sure the clamp on the big end was tight, I had to use these small ones, which are technically meant for cutting, but they did the job and the clamp tightened down around the big end of the boot. I should also mention I did remove all the old grease from the steering rack and from the inner tie rod, and then I put some new grease on. I just used CV grease because I did some research, and that's pretty much the same sort of grease you'd use on a steering rack anyway. But anyways, the new boot was on and that job was done. For the suspension bushings though, initially I was going to remove the old ones and put some new ones on, and then I found out that it was this ridiculously tedious process, and even after trying it myself, I just decided that it would be completely pointless and it would be more worth it to just buy new control arms. So I did, and thankfully they weren't too expensive. After putting those in, I torqued all the bolts down with the suspension compressed under a load, as you should, and that was pretty much it. Everything else was already back together, so once I'd done that, I torqued up the wheel hub nut, put the wheels back on, and was finally ready to take it down to the alignment shop. Now at this point I was already very short on time, probably about half an hour late for the alignment shop. Thankfully they were very chill, and they didn't really seem to see it as a concrete booking, so I was able to get in there and they still did the car for me, no problems, which was very nice of them. But unfortunately at the time I was very stressed, especially when I realized that the car's battery was too low to start. Well, after all that, it's time to finally see if it was worth it. First of all, I'm going to need to prime the fucking thing. I'll do that now. on, please. Now you notice there, it did crank very, very slightly, but clearly not quite enough. I have a feeling it would have cranked if I had reconnected this vacuum line. Yep, I did not realize that vacuum line was disconnected until the afternoon, way after I'd taken it to the alignment shop and way after I'd found that the throttle does this. Okay, we've got a jump start. Car's running now. Let's check throttle response. I haven't checked this yet. Oh, yes! Yes, that's perfect! That's less perfect. But that's fine, it actually responds properly. Yes, very, very stupid. But it was all good. The car was done. The new tyres were in the boot, and I just had to take it down to the alignment shop now. And that was no hassle. Nothing major. They put the new tyres on, they aligned the car for me, and that was that. Now, it's finally time to talk about the test drive. In this particular test drive, I thought, you know what? Let me get a fucking microphone. I'm sick of having to listen to all that wind noise when editing the videos, and I know that it's really, really annoying to watch as well. So I got a simple Rode lavalier microphone, and unfortunately, even though it was kind of peaking the whole time, I think it definitely sounds a lot better than basically barely being able to hear what I'm saying. So, time for the test drive. So, 4 weeks of hard labour, waiting for parts, back and forth trips to hardware stores, and a lot more money than I'd like to admit. Was it all really worth it? Let me show you. To make my face do this, I'd do it all again. So what's the car like now? It's great, that's what it is. It feels so much firmer, so much happier to turn into corners than it did before. It feels like it's just come alive, basically. The power delivery, it's a bit of a hot day today, so it's kind of hard to tell. It's probably a little low on power, just based on the fact that, you know, the air going into the engine is very hot and humid. But what I can say is that on a good day, it is much better. It's so smooth, so linear. The response is right there. Like, it basically feels like how it should have felt when we put those new injectors in about 6 or 7 months ago. Except, of course, those weren't the correct injectors, and that's the main reason why it didn't feel good with those in there. But now, these are not the right ones either, but they're much, much closer. Pretty much, as I can imagine at least, exactly the same as the stock ones would be. As a result, it feels amazing. It really, really does feel like I'm actually getting all the power that the engine should be making. What's more, as I said, the response is instant. Before, because it was running rich, if I got on the throttle, there'd be a sort of sputtering, and then it'd start going. But this, it's instant, and that's how I know these injectors are good, is because it's actually responding correctly. Not only that, but when I'm just driving normally, I look down here, I can see my fuel data, and I can see that I'm no longer running rich, which is great. Less money spent on fuel, and more time spent worrying about how I'm going to take the next corner, rather than when to top up fuel. It feels amazing. I actually have confidence when I turn into corners now, and I don't have to worry, oh, you know, I've got a fucking split CV boot or something. I don't have to worry about that now. I can just drive it how I want. It's amazing. And there you have it. That's the car. Now, I did want to record an acceleration video. Unfortunately, while doing so, I found out that it doesn't have a consistent power band. It drops off after 5,000 RPM, way too early of course, and then all of a sudden it jumps back up after 6,000. I'm not really sure what's doing this, but it had it before I put in the new injectors, so I know that it's not because of those. I'm thinking maybe coil packs, because I'm pretty sure they're quite old, but I'm honestly not sure. It's also got an annoying idle issue where the throttle pedal's a little sticky, sometimes it'll idle a bit high, and even when I'm driving I'll let off the throttle and it'll sort of jerk forward as if I've tapped it, except I haven't. That's just the idle control valve being stupid. So I'll either need to clean it or replace it. I'm not really sure. I guess I'll give cleaning it a try, and if that doesn't work, then I'll replace it. But the important part is that the car drives properly now. Anyway, that's about all. Obviously I've already mentioned what still needs to be done to the car. There are a couple other things, but the main thing is that I need to get the engine running right. But once I do that, I'd say I'm pretty happy. Anyway, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye bye.